This is a rye field, a common cereal. People make rye bread from it. These are ears of rye, parts of rye from which you make bread dough. And this black protrusion killed half of Paris in the 10th century, decreased fertility in Europe 400 years later, and is believed to be partially responsible for witch trials in Salem and in Norway in the 17th century. We called it Ergot, or more precisely in this case, Claviceps purpurea. It's a parasitic fungus. It infects many types of cereal, grasses and many other plants. When its spores, particles through which fungi reproduce, enter a particular part of a plant, the fungus begins to grow, extend, develop, until it emerges as a visible protrusion called sclerosium. Those sclerosia contain high amounts of toxic substances, ergot alkaloids. Eating ergot alkaloids can lead to a serious sickness called ergotism. It was especially frequent during the Middle Ages in Europe. There even was a monastic order that cared for the people afflicted with ergotism. This order gave ergot poisoning a name: Holy Fire, or Saint Anthony's Fire, after the order's patron, Saint Anthony. The name Holy Fire was used to describe the burning sensation of limbs felt by people afflicted with ergot poisoning. But let's say you're an uneducated medieval villager. Would you intentionally eat a dark, fingerish protrusion emerging from the side of a rye ear? It's not for me to decide for you, but knowing you're probably not asking to die, there's a small chance you'd risk it, especially if not knowing what effect it will produce. And the scariest thing is, you do not have to eat it in this form. Paris in the 10th century wasn't having a culinary revolution revolving around parasitic fungi, but the majority of the poorer population in Paris ate a lot of rye bread. And as you can guess, it was the most likely culprit of their death. Even today, some quantities of ergot alkaloids can be found in rye bread and flour, but their levels are strictly monitored in developed countries. The limits in the European Union allow for 0.2 grams of ergot alkaloids per 1 kilogram of unprocessed grain. As for the United States, the limits vary from 0.05 to 0.3% of grain's mass, depending on the type of cereal. Eating ergot raw or in bread can have two most common results. Consuming a large dose of ergot alkaloids can lead to a state of mental instability. You may temporarily develop hallucinations, paranoid symptoms, and experience strong muscle spasms. People surrounding you will see your body position taking up abnormal forms, while your sanity stands on the verge of collapsing. And this state is known as convulsive ergotism. Your ability to see, hear, and feel loses reliability. What you experience in this time is limited only by the limits of your mind. By itself, it leads to death of 10 to 20% of the affected, but the rates would change if you lived in the 17th century Salem or in Finnmark in Norway at that time. Convulsive ergotism is one of the leading explanations as to why so many innocent women and a few men were sentenced to death for presumed witchcraft. Of course, many of the persecuted were probably tortured to plead guilty. Nonetheless, there were accounts given of seeing Satan or experiencing other unrealistic events. In Finnmark, a considerable number of suspects reported eating or drinking black grains in bread, beer, milk, or in other food, strongly suggesting the ergot was the culprit of their unfair fate. But it's not the worst possible state caused by consuming these fungi. After a prolonged consumption of ergot alkaloids, in bread, for example, hallucinations are a relatively weak symptom. In this situation, you experience an intense burning sensation in your limbs that doesn't want to go away. You feel a sense of touch gradually escaping from your arms and legs. Your limbs become swollen. You see the skin on your limbs turning darker, taking a shade of grey, black or blue, as if they were incinerated. And yet, you see no fire burning around your extremities. Darkened tissues die as gangrene consumes them. This extremely deadly state was the one that monks called Saint Anthony's fire. In modern medical terms, we call it gangrenous ergotism. As we know today, it's the dose that constitutes toxicity of a substance. So even though those substances may kill us, their medical attributes have been in use since ancient times. They have been used in accelerating the process of giving birth and in initiating abortion. However, this method proved to be very unsafe, as it was nearly impossible back then to dose the ergot alkaloids precisely. But, as with every other potentially dangerous drug, ergot alkaloids were studied. The most prominent research dates to the times of the First World War and the interwar period. It was back then that lysergic acid was synthesized from ergot alkaloids. And from lysergic acid, another, today well-known substance has been synthesized, namely lysergic acid diethylamide. I assume you know of this substance, just in its abbreviated form. But LSD wasn't the only substance humanity synthesized from ergot alkaloids. Medicines for treating hormonal disorders were made, drugs for Parkinson's disease, drugs alleviating migraine symptoms. We gained relatively many positive results from using these derivatives of ergot alkaloids. But going back to the beginning, raw sclerosium of ergot does not contain all these remedies. It contains all these dangerous ingredients which were the cause of ergotism in the past. But the past doesn't always remain in the past. This is a rye field, a common cereal from which rye bread is made. This field is located in Ethiopia, but it might as well be located in India or Russia. The most recent epidemics of ergotism in these countries occurred less than 100 years ago. And as seasonal weather changes become increasingly disrupted with ongoing climate change, increased humidity and irregular raining periods in some regions of the world will increase the chances of grain being infected with ergot at harvest. Whilst the fungi-infected ears will not be allowed for distribution in developed countries, the underdeveloped ones will, again, be at risk of another ergot epidemic, and the holy fire will ignite again, even though it was supposed to be extinguished a long time ago.